It's really annoying when you crash a foam RC plane, especially expensive EDFs that are very delicate and don't take much to cause a lot of damage. In 2023, I flew my FMS Hawk into a tree and I was gutted. I decided that I was going to learn how to do the repairs myself, and the results were really successful. How do you like your Hawk's nose in one bloody piece? A key component to this success was finding the exact paint colour match. Last year I missed the runway with my Eurofighter on landing and was really annoyed with myself. I'm going to a head tracking event in 2 days, so I thought I would document the repair and hopefully I'll make it in time. The Eurofighter is a very specific kind of grey and I don't have an exact match, so let's see how I get on. Right, so let's look at the damage. Luckily the nose detaches. A bit of damage around there. Sort of details here got ripped off. Not too fussed about that. Other side is crumpled a bit more. That's what happened to the nose. You can get that as a spare part. Looks a bit like mine. And then this is the wingtip, which just ripped off, and I wish this one had, because this one hasn't. Instead, it's crumpled everything and delaminated the foam. And then underneath here, made a right mess where it's just tugged on everything. Whereas this side, even though it's ripped it off, it's clean under here. Flew it with the door off anyways, because when it went into the long grass, the door would just rip off, so. But there is a tiny bit of damage there. Not too bad. And the nose, this side, crumpled there, crumpled down here. Let's see what can be done. So, how to go about this? Well, I removed this guy already because it had grass all around it. Might need a little cleaning up. Gonna take this off because a bit of plastic there detaches. And then we have got a steamer. I don't know how much good it's going to do. It's meant for small creases, certainly not meant for that. But first thing to do, take this off. When working with foam, cut your nails as short as possible, because when you're doing this business, you have nail marks all over the thing. Sometimes unavoidable. Okay, let's see what this has done. So that remains part. Look at all the grass in there. That remains part of the wing. We just disconnect this and clear the grass out. Well, that has properly disconnected itself. I don't think that gap is meant to be there. I don't think you're meant to be able to squeeze that like that. Right, look at the other side. I mean, it's torn it off. But yeah, that part there is completely flush. So I think on the other side, glue it as best I can back together. So on this side, it's easier to see. So there's a sort of lip that's meant to slide in that gap there. And then we've got a piece missing at the back, which I think I've got. When you crash, make sure that you get all of your bits and just look around in the grass and look at your model. It's difficult to do because you're stressed and angry and want to give up. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Perfect. I'm gonna get the steamer on this side first. What it does is, with this nozzle here, it sort of directly applies heat and water, and the idea is to expand the foam, and hopefully it sort of relaxes to where it once was, or you can sort of mold it and bend it and shape it. But I think we might need some of this. So, should have a light on it somewhere, that side. And now I wait. I do think it's best, as much as I don't want to undo those 2 screws and do it that way. So I don't want to glue the thing in permanently, accidentally. Luckily, it has left the foam behind. I think it would have just glued it in permanently if I'd done the whole thing. So, now I can slot that in somewhere there. And there's just a little gap. That's what it's meant to be. So yeah, I think I might do that. But I'm also going to get the steamer on this side. Take these electronics up before I start spraying them with steam. Need to be very mindful of this, actually. Might get a cloth, because that's the servo to the aileron. Put a cloth over the servo. I don't want any steam, even though it's just going to be vapor. Be really careful, because you don't want it to bubble. This is really hot, but it's direct, so it can cause crocodiling, as they call it, which we can sort out. That one is just starting to do it a little bit. Trust the process. Some of this paint might just come off as the foam expands, and the paint underneath, of course, has to expand with it and often flakes. It's not just one setting on this either, so I'm varying it. Full setting that's full send, just sort of pressing it like that. Sometimes you have to go full send. If it's not coming out, lose my patience, go full send. It's not a quick thing, this either, by the way. So it depends how sort of good you want it. This method's really just for getting like small lines out. I'm not finished yet. I will persist. We have this little piece here, and well, it's done for anyways with the paint, but just gonna try it with this, but I need 2 hands for that. I've carefully wedged it between some scissors. One of those lines is meant to be there, but yeah, not much hope for that one. So, as you might be able to see, some of these stubborn lines have come out, but then you start to get this, what people call crocodiling, sort of hexagonal, where the foam expands and the paint has nowhere else to go other than the foam forces it upwards, and at that point there's really nothing else you can do to the creases other than filler and paint So I think this thing is ready to be glued in. Forgot I got a light here, but the steamer was plugged in there, so couldn't use it for that. Yoo-hoo pour I like to use. Similar to foam tack, everyone has their own opinion and everyone has their own poison. So take this off, do a bit of gluing. So the first thing that needs gluing is actually this little tiny piece here. I think it's meant to touch there, if it is. Problem is I don't have a complete unbroken side to check, so I'm just gonna have to guess. Microsurgery this, but it's got to be done. So Yoo-hoo pour on a cocktail stick, and what you're meant to do with Yoo-hoo pour is get it on both sides of the foam, and then you're meant to tack it together, and then you wait maybe 30 minutes and it's sort of properly tacked up, almost sort of like double-sided tape kind of tack, and then you squeeze it together and it should just stick. That's the theory anyway. Difficult with a cocktail stick. What I usually do next is then glue this one in and this one, but the problem is until that's pressed in together I don't really know what the level is, because it kind of sticks up. So wait for that one to get tacky, squish it together and hope for the best. Let's steam this side while we wait. Cover that up. See, this has done damage to here. Can't see it on the camera, but all this is green. But yeah, that's a bit of a ding there. It's not too bad. Yeah, that's actually where the back end of this is caught, isn't it? That's going to be covered up anyway, so I might put this on to just do these little bits, or big bits should I say. A little bit better, but sometimes there's only so much you can do. But what it does do when you are putting the steamer on is it allows you to press the foam back in and reshape it. So then what you can do is you can put filler over that. It's going to be difficult with all these lines over it, like scale details, and paint it up. Let's go squeeze the other side. Let's see if it's ready. That's actually gone. There's only the tiniest bit, so there was a gap there, and it's now less of a gap. There is still a bit of a gap under there. I'm gonna get my cocktail stick in and stop filming and do it properly. It's been about 20 minutes and I think that will do. So next is for this to go on, and that is fitting nice now. Well, as nice as it can be. So for this one, it's going to be Yoo-hoo pour around here, 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 and the same on other side. Tack it together, or you can just put it on one side, but the idea of doing that with Yoo-hoo pour is if you can't sort of get to certain bits, you tack it together, put it off, and then it sort of starts tacking here and here, and then you leave it for 20 minutes, come back, and it should just stick. So I'm going to do that. You really can see why this failed here. There's not much holding it together at all. So I decided to actually just glue this side, because the paint's gonna, even then, look, it's gonna seep out. So that puts the glue on both sides. You wait for it to go tacky and it will just stick back in. 20 minutes of back rest and it's definitely tacky. Need 2 hands. I don't know how long this is gonna last. Definitely a weak point of the model in general. Now for this bit, without gluing it to the aileron, it definitely needs some attention in there, because it glues to the side there. It's going to be difficult and messy. do it without recording. So I've tacked it in place and on that side. And I might not wait as long here because it's going to need, sort of goes up and then in, so it needs a little bit of adjustment, and then it's probably going to be an overnighter for this one to completely dry before any of this goes back in. You can use one of your partner's spoons, they'll completely agree to it, and as you are steaming it, try flatten it out. That's as good as that's going to get there, I think. There is a tiny missing piece there, which I guess probably in a blade of grass somewhere, too small to put in anyway. That can be filled, flattened out. Amazing, isn't it, what sort of like a split second poor decision can cause hours and hours of pain. Reworking everything. So on the other side, the bit you can actually see not looking great at all, and now I've flipped it over, we can see that crumpling here on the front. Nice big gash in the wing as well, and something there. Steamer time. This is where a steamer works pretty good. So that was indented in there because the foam is actually loose. So heating it up, it's actually expanded it. And now that is sitting flat, even though it still doesn't look great. It's better. This is where the steamer does its best work, when you've got sort of like just minor crumples. It might not take them out completely, but makes it so much better. Yes, I did try and steam this bit out, but it's a panel, it's part of the plane, so it won't get that one out, just too big. But on this side, not sure I filmed this side, but it did great on this side. So you can see here where I've applied the steamer that all of the paint has just come off, and that's just because it was more impacted, so the steam expands it out more to sort of try and regain its original shape, and the paint just flakes off. So it looks a mess, and because we've got this little dip in the paint here, actually looks like it hasn't done anything. But if I angle the camera to the shape of the wing, you'll see that it's almost completely come back into shape. The problem with this guy is very difficult to match paint. 'Tis not the time to be trying to find the right shade of grey when there are a million shades of grey. And the thing with grey is, same with all colours, but grey especially, you put it on and think, yeah, I've got the perfect match, and then it dries and it's a different shade. And those colour swabs that they have in the stores are never the same as what it dries. I got so lucky with the Hawk, but there were only 3 reds to choose from because red isn't in fashion. And everything is grey. We live in a grey world. Colour-wise and otherwise. So, one time lightweight ready mixed filler. Red Devil. There goes Lewis Hamilton. Now I used to think I'll be clever and get a card and get all this paint sanded off and make it nice, but after my experience with the Hawk, as long as it gets in here, you're going to end up sanding the filler down anyway. So don't worry about it and put more on than you think, because you'll need to sort of sculpt it anyway. And I'll just use my finger. This stuff's really weird because it's not sticky at all. It actually takes quite a bit to adhere. And it's quite tricky to get it off your finger to put onto the model itself. This is an overnight dry and then sand. Looks like I'm putting on way too much. You can, because we're going to sand it off. More is better. We want to just rub it in, get it in all of the cracks, So you might think, well, you just wipe it off now, but because the foam is impacted, yeah, I've put a steamer on it, but it's still slightly misshapen. So the more of this stuff we put on, and we can sand it off and look at it by eye, the better. See, I could just, with my finger, like, and you go, oh, that's it, you know, that's fine, but it's covered in all the holes now, but I'm gonna put more on. I just flip that off just to demonstrate. So, kind of like this. I've tried to make it as even as possible, but it doesn't really matter. It's really actually quite tricky stuff to get down where you want it to. And it sort of stops there. You can see sort of side profile view. You can see where there's still a dip in the foam there. And that's the bit really that we need to get right. And we'll do that with sanding, but that's an overnight drying job. Could do the underneath. The problem with flipping it upside down and doing the other side is you could accidentally, you know, there, just done it by pressing it. There, that's it. That'll be okay. You do that whilst you're trying to, you know, do the other side. I'll probably leave that for maybe an hour just so that it tacks or goes hard a little bit, because you can feel it drying on your fingertips if you put it on that thinly, but if you put a big amount on, then it's overnight until it's completely ready for sanding. Now I probably should have waited to do the filler before I glued this down, because this shouldn't do that. However, the structural integrity of this bottom bit is okay. It's just whether messing with a cocktail stick and putting glue down that gap should not be there, and glue that down and try not to make too much of a mess there. So, cocktail stick, yoo-hoo pour. I'm almost tempted with this side not to bother. She won't see it, and it's so minor. But let's give it a go anyway. So I've had to put a clip on here with some card either side so it doesn't damage the foam further, because super glue would probably have been the better choice, but yoo-hoo pour through there, it just won't stick. It's now 12 o'clock at night, so door's shut. Well, let's see if this has worked. Yep, pretty much. Still a mess though. So this is going to be tricky to tidy up with that stuff, but let's try. Okay, so I know it looks like overkill. Very difficult to avoid these lines here, but this is what I did on the Hawk, and the Hawk came out great. But I think a lot of the success of the Hawk coming out great was the fact that I got the colour match perfect, and we haven't got one for this. So let that dry overnight, see if I can get some sleep, and try again tomorrow. I did decide to just slightly fill these in because that was quite a big one there. Okay, so 80 grit, I think it is, on the side. Like one of those blocks where it's got like varying degrees, but that one's definitely like very soft. You can actually see the red of where I worked on the Hawk previously. I could do with a new one really. It's white because of all the filler from before. Let's see what happens. So it is possible to sand too much away, and sometimes it doesn't adhere very well, like in this spot, sanding away and then just that corner came off. But the good thing about it is you can just apply more and try again here as well, sanding it, got the perfect shape, knocked it doing another bit and it fell off. This side might have needed more. Might get away with just paint filling that in. Let's get sanding on this. The difficult part's knowing how much do you take it down by, because visually it looks a mess. You can see some of the cracks starting to show through as I sand down, but they are filled in. But to the naked eye, all of this just looks like it's uneven, but I run my finger over it and it's smooth. Very tricky to gauge. This stuff is 300 to 400 grit for the finer stuff. That'll do for today. So I need to go and do something else. If you ever wonder how I store this thing, this contraption here. In fact, all of the hanger, maul, hawk, salto, something else, don't know what that is, something else, wings in there, wings up there, wings in boxes. Well, that needs to go up there. Yeah, owning planes, not as simple as quadcopters. So, paint. You might think that, oh, if I damage my plane, I can go to Freewing. They'll have paint for the model, and they actually do sell paint for some of their models. None of it matches whatsoever. If you email Freewing and say, what is the paint code for this model? They'll say, oh, we have to have it made up specially because we spray them in a certain way in big booths and the color never matches up, which is marketing speak for, when you break your plane, we want you to buy an entire new wing, or we want you to buy an entire new fuselage. So, there is a chap, and I will put his name here. He said that he took this from B&Q and this from B&Q, did a 50-50 mix, and it came out same color as this. So, if it works, thanks to you, and if it doesn't, well, it's your fault. In terms of paint applicators, I do have an airbrush. The only thing is, very difficult to work with an airbrush because you have to thin it out, and even more difficult with grey, any colour really, to get it nice and thick. So if you really want to do a proper job, you can airbrush. Personally, I usually just use a little tiny brush like that and then sort of just dab it. And that's really good if the paint matches perfectly like it did on my Hawk. Here, we'll just have to see how it goes. Then we have the fill method, and that is to cut up one of these sponges.
It has a reasonable flat edge.
Phil just put in some lippy on my plane. It's this red, look how it just instant correct colour. Amazing, isn't it? And then you dab it like that. Then for bigger areas, we have the roller. Now, I don't think I'll be needing this. Too big, but if we were doing the whole plane, we could use this. So, 50-50 mix in there. It's sealed up. Hopefully it's not dried up. And let's see how it goes. Looks about right, doesn't it? Grey is terrible on camera though, but to the eye it looks alright. Needs a bit of a stir because it's been sat for a while. So I've got one of these little stirring things. There's some darker and some lighter grey in there. This mixing pot here, it's got sort of measurements on it so you can get it roughly right. The thing about grey is it can look perfect when you put it on, and then it dries out and it's a completely different colour. What the sponge does is it sort of thins it out and evens it out, kind of sort of blends it. Let's move that out the way. This is definitely looking lighter than the model. That is visibly lighter, even on the camera, which is difficult. So on the camera, greys tend to sort of just all look the same shade, but with the eye, it is looking a lot lighter. So I have to wait, see how it dries. Just paint these little bits underneath as well. And you might be thinking, oh, it's lighter because the foam is lighter and it needs a couple of coats, but it's making the whole area lighter around it. So really is going to be a case of see how it dries. This definitely looks more of a mess, and it's because I didn't completely cover everything with filler and sand it down. I just filled the holes in, and that's what you get. If you're wondering why did I pile the filler on, is because when you just fill the holes, that's sort of the finish that you get, and you can tell. There's a wasp. I got stung by a wasp the other day. Go away. I did that thing that usually never works where you turn the light off. Flew straight out. See, now I would say that does not match at all. Let's see how the other side is doing. Hard to say because this is a smaller area, but it has definitely darkened. The foam's just not going to show it, and the sun is on the horizon, so it's making the light impossible to determine different types of greys. 50 shades of grey. A million shades of grey. Too many shades of grey. Grey. Well, amazingly, as it has dried, it's come out just a tiny bit darker. But it's actually not bad at all. Not perfect. But what can you do? Grey. Stay away from grey. Well, tips are back on. Not the perfect finish. I think the problem is that the quality on this is just so perfect. And I think the colour is correct. But then, you know, we've got the rough stuff there, and you know, because this has clearly been sprayed on evenly and this has not, so looks a bit darker. So I think it's just not quite right, but probably good enough for this. Amazingly, it went on lighter, dried darker, grey. Hate the stuff. Another problem, so plugged my battery in, thought, yeah, make sure everything else works. No, in the crash, this thing popped off and disappeared. And I forgot. And so this got stuck under there, and the gear wouldn't open, but it's just a missing clamp from there to there, which somewhere I did order. Yes. The moment of truth for this gear, at least. In your own time. Takes forever. This is where the problem happened, because this wheel will come up and it gets stuck under there. Hooray! Now, what I haven't seen mentioned anywhere is these are so brittle, so they just clamp in this side and this side. You have a hard landing or hit a piece of grass, that just pops out, and that's exactly how that came off. This one's done it as well. So, yeah. I think if I was flying this hardcore, even though they look great, and you've got the lights too, probably best to take them off. Now, I am considering putting it back on. First time it touched a long bit of grass. Not even like super long, just, you know, normal height grass, not bowling green grass. It ripped these little lugs off here that go in there and there. And that's it. Tosh, you have to buy the new part. Look at that. It's not good, is it? Just moves. Has that come unglued? I mean, there's 2 screws in it. Damn it. Well, FR wing, free wing. If that isn't meant to be glued down, well, it is now. It's quite a clever mechanism on this. Always amazes me. So you've got steerable nose wheel. Is that straight? Good enough. Steerable nose wheel on a mechanism, and as this comes down, it's on a sliding mechanism, the servo there. So as this goes down, this slides back and that no longer twists the wheel inside. But more importantly, do all of these doors work? Yes! And now for the finishing part. Ta-da! Look how well this came out. Only joking, I wish. Then again, even though this is a spare part, look, a couple of dings in it. Blimmin' foamies, eh? Who'd have them? Ta-da! Now on the original, this here is a different colour than that one. But, yeah, there we go. I think that's as good as it's going to get. In the garage here, the colour's right, but just because this is just so nice and shiny and layered on even, and then here we've got, yeah, you can see it there. I mean, I could have spent more time on it, but who wants to do that when you can go and fly it instead? Save that paint for the next one. Might be sooner rather than later. Tis a little bit breezy, to say the least. Look at these cool trolleys, proper wheels.